So in the last set of slides, we talked about policy failure. Now we're going to discuss policy learning, learning from failure, right? And learning from failure can lead to policy success. So failure is challenging to define. We talked about this in the last set of slides, right? A lot of this is related to complexity. Some policies are first steps towards broad solutions. Doing something shows that the system responds. And the question that we can ask is, would doing nothing have been better? And like I said with the example in the last set of slides about the Clean Water Act, perfect achievement of the goal shouldn't be the enemy of good, right? There is this kind of notion of doing something is actually progress. A lot of times we want our government to do a lot, right? People say they don't like, oh, I don't like the government, but we expect a lot from it. And we really, we want simple things like the mail delivery. We want roads that don't have a lot of potholes in them. You know, we want a strong economy, right? We want students to be educated, kids to be educated, right? We demand a lot from government. And when it comes to problems, we demand that government do something about it, right? Most of the time. So just because there's a lot of demand, this makes failure more inevitable, right? Especially when we ask government to solve really complex problems. And sometimes government may claim that they can do things that they really can't, right? They may be infeasible, right? So we have, and then ourselves, we believe that the government can do a lot. And so we have unrealistic expectations sometimes too. So reasonable expectations, on the other hand, are kind of a self-reflection on us, right? Do we expect government to do so many things? Are we asking for so much? And then if just some sort of progress is made, does that mean that we're moving closer to achieving our goals? And so to understand policy failure, to think about learning from our experiences, and then into the next set of slides and understanding about policy evaluation, is setting realistic expectations fair for evaluation processes. Again, sometimes failure is kind of connected to the poor causal theory, and that theory will introduce influences what tools we use. The tool choice is going to influence implementation, and implementation is going to influence outcomes. And so if there are weak links in this causal chain, policy failure can occur. So how do we learn? Learning from failure. This is an opportunity, right? This is an opportunity to improve, to make better policy, and to actually achieve our goals. And so failure provides really valuable information. I know every time I've failed at doing something or made a mistake, you try to learn from it and improve for the next time. And that's the same thing here. Learning can lead to improvement. And our systematic analysis of what went wrong helps us avoid repeating mistakes. We can think of learning as a path to policy change, right? We talked about different policy change models early on, and we'll swing back to them in later lectures. But accumulating information to make better decisions, to better understand the tools, to better understand the problems, there's all a process to discovery, right? This is how we can kind of transform this failure into an opportunity. I'm going to talk about two types of learning. The first is single loop learning. This is where you're kind of correcting errors in implementation without questioning the policy, right? You're learning about how performance went, learning about the processes and tools that may have failed, and you're adjusting by changing those processes and tools. I can apply this to a concept that maybe you're familiar with, studying for a test, right? So you took the first test in the class and you didn't do too great on it. And so now you want to learn from your failure, right? So you're going to correct your errors. Maybe you're going to take better notes. Maybe you're going to get a good night's sleep before the test. Maybe you're going to actually read the book and take notes and go to class. And so you're learning about your performance, right? So you're evaluating what you did wrong before the first test, how you studied, what your habits were, your level of engagement with the material. and adjusting before the next test, right? And you're changing the process. Maybe you're changing your note-taking efforts, your study efforts, your dedicated time to the class, hoping that you're going to get a better grade, right? Hoping that you'll have success on that next test. Double loop learning begins by going back to the underlying assumptions, the root causes of the actual problem, questioning the policy itself. So you're doing the single loop approach, and then you're going back again and double looping back. Okay, so I thought about what I did, right? And you're rethinking the fundamental nature of the problem, right? What are the goals? What are the values? What are your assumptions that you came into when you're addressing that problem, right? So the single loop, you failed the first test and you decided to alter your study habits, take better notes, get a better night's sleep before the next test. What happens if you fail again? You can go back into this double loop, and now you're really questioning all of the kind of deeper underlying assumptions. Did you need to take 5 classes at the same time, right? Did you need to take 5 hard classes? Should you can go a bit deeper with this if you want to, right? Is this the right major for you? Should you be in college, right? And continue to go around all these things until you spiral into a hole of despair. But I'm not trying to take you to that. I'm just trying to say that what you're doing is in this double loop, you're going back and challenging your understanding of the actual problem. We want to learn. And why do we want to learn about policies? To improve performance, right? Why do you want to learn about your study habits if you failed the first test? To improve performance on the next test, right? We also think learning is good, right? Generally, it's a normative expectations. We want government to learn from its mistakes and have better policies. And we institutionalize this through the evaluation process, right? Where there's reporting back and measurable measures for success, and things like after action reports. When it comes to policy specific learning, there's 3 different types that we can think about. One is instrumental learning, and this is about learning about the tools, right? Are we really using the best tool to achieve the goal? If you think about the example I gave with heavy durable goods like washers and dryers, and the tool was a $500 rebate if you were to buy new ones, right? Trying to incentivize purchasing new washers and dryers from like Home Depot and Lowe's. And that tool really wasn't a success. And so the tool or instrumental learning in this case was bump it up to $750 rebate and really get the people in the doors to buy new durable goods, new washers and dryers, right? So you're learning about, did you use the wrench when you needed the hammer, right? In this instrumental learning part. Social learning is really understanding how people perceive the problem and the solution, right? So you're thinking more closely about on the ground level social construction of the problem and the solution, and the values and the goals that underlie the policy, and recognizing if the approach that you took to implementation actually worked in a given environment, in a given locality. And political learning is about making better arguments for the most part, right? How to navigate the political environment, how to think about political feasibility, how to make these better arguments when you're engaging in the policy making process, right? When you're there at that alternative selection stage, really pushing for what you think is the necessary approach to develop the policy, right? How do you make that a better argument to actually achieve your policy goal or the outcome or the output from the policy making efforts? Success is what you really want, right? The goal of learning is success, right? If you learned that your study habits for that test in that class were not so good, that you needed a better night's sleep, that you should have taken better notes, that you needed a friend in the class to rely on to be a study buddy, right? These things build success out of your failures, right? Because you have learned, and learning is transformational. So the key takeaways here: failure is complex and subjective. There are multiple types of learning. Single loop and double loop serve different purposes. When it comes to policy-oriented learning, there is instrumental learning, social learning, and political learning. And the ultimate goal is policy improvement. So think about maybe some of these questions here as you consider your policy paper topic, and think about how policy failure and learning are a key component to some of the stuff that you're writing about. All right, and that's it for this set. Take care.